What's up, everybody? Professor Sansom, digital audio DAPR 300R, the digital audio lecture series. But today's topic is a little bit different. It's not a guest lecture. We're going to talk about beginning with the end in mind. We're going to talk about getting through something that you guys will all have to do through this program, and that is getting through your senior capstone, or what we call senior projects. So I'm actually in the module for senior projects in Canvas. And by the time you guys get to this, it may change. But for now, let's talk about what senior projects is. Normally, I don't like to read what I put on something, but I think it's important to talk about why we have this thing called a senior project and what we ultimately hope that you guys do with this. So let's talk about starting with the end in mind. And as you guys come into the digital audio program, you guys obviously being in the digital audio program, we want you guys to have an exit strategy, right? We want you guys to be able to come in here and think of something that you ultimately want to do, to say, hey, here I am, hire me. And that's what really a senior project is. A senior project is taking the culmination of everything that you've learned in the 3, 4, 5, 12 years that you've been in the program. Just kidding. I hope nobody stays in here 12 years. But the years that you come through the program, I hope that you guys spend the time with an idea of what you've gathered that you love and what job you hope to take in the industry. And the reason that I say this is because we have people that come into senior projects and they have the notion that they have to do something that's completely opposite to anything that they would ever do. And while I do expect you guys to push yourself, challenge yourself, and to be able to develop something that is really the statement of, I should be hired, I also want it to be something that you're passionate about, that you have a lot of drive and love for what you've done. So, for an example, a student in the past came to me, said, I want to build a hardware unit, right? Which I think that's fine if you want to build a hardware unit. And then I, kind of shopped the idea around with the other professors. And Owen said, I thought he wanted to do video game stuff. I thought I wanted to be a video game sound designer. I said, you know what? I think you're right. So I talked to the student. Owen talked to the student, said ultimately, like, what do you want after you graduate? And he said, well, my dream job would be to work for this specific video game studio, to move to this place and to be able to develop video games as a sound designer for this company. So Owen and I said, so why do you want to build a hardware unit? And his response was, oh, because I thought it would be a good thing to say. I did this. And then Owen said, how is that going to get you a job in a video game? That's a $1 million question right there, right? Maybe you designed and built something really cool that gets you a job at a manufacturing company that designs maybe TC Electronic or something, because they're out there developing and designing effects pedals, or you get a job at somewhere like Warm Audio or Mog Audio where they're developing compressors and preamps and stuff. But is that the job that you want? And then ultimately he said no. So we asked him what he thought he could do to get into the job position that he wanted. He said, well, I should probably go find something with a video game company. He actually reached out to said video game company that he wanted to have his dream job with and said, do you have any positions open for any type of internship that I could do while in school? He got it. He got something. He was going to help them create sound effects and implement some of the sound effects into some of the things that are built into the game engine, right? To do some implementation. A few months into his capstone, the lead developer for the audio side of things wasn't really doing his job very well. And all of a sudden, this student moved up into a position of a kind of lead role in this. He's got a resume piece all of a sudden and finished a video game and got to work with the company that ultimately he wants long term to work with. Now, I haven't followed up with him because there were some other personal reasons why he wasn't willing to quite jump the pond yet and go work for that company full time. Mostly having to do with his family and the goals of their family before they did something like that. But the last time that I talked to him, he was still doing development with games, which is incredible, right? You think about that, you think about, okay, you come into a program and then you go into this nebulous void of what do I want to do when I grow up, right? I think we all hit that and we get into this fear of what and how am I going to find a job when I graduate from here? It's hard to find a job when you graduate from here if you don't know what you're looking for. The number one thing that my graduating class ran into was we all searched for one term, audio engineer. An audio engineer would bring up this huge plethora of jobs, and a lot of them were like Bose and lead acoustic engineer on speaker development and manufacturing. He had to have a PhD, and we are like, oh, I don't think that's what I want to do. Like, this is what I want to do. Well, it turns out that you have to know and understand how to navigate the world of search terms and know how people post jobs. Senior projects isn't about teaching you guys how to find a job, but it's teaching you, and through this class that you guys have been in, it's teaching you listen to what these people are saying about what they're calling their jobs. Because you might find somebody like Joe Barisi, who is an audio engineer, call himself a producer or a mixer or something along those lines. When you guys listen to the lecture from Fred, he was definitely an audio engineer, but he was an assistant engineer and he works in television now doing post stuff for Warner Brothers. And then all of a sudden you start listening to the titles that they've stated through what they've done. Or we've had a lot of people who are independent contractors. And realistically, a lot of you might become independent contractors as you walk out into this world. An independent contractor, if you've taken corporate issues, you know there's a lot of benefits to becoming an independent contractor. But there's also some things that are kind of scary being an independent contractor. There's balances, right? You can have a nice salary and a care package and benefits, or you can make a lot of money. But sometimes making a lot of money comes with the risk of the swings and the season, right? I've noticed working in recording studios that it always seemed like about February, there was no work. Like the month of February always seemed like there was no work. It was just seemed dead. And then it would come into about the end of July and do the same thing for a couple weeks. And then in August, it picked up a little bit more. But in August, I started recording Christmas music. And then in September, I would be mixing Christmas music. And then October would roll around and we finish out the Christmas music and it'd be Halloween. And then all of a sudden Christmas music came back. And so by the time Christmas rolls around, I'm so burned out of Christmas music, I want to puke, right? Well, that's a risk that you take in going into a field where people are going to come into your recording studio and want to do Christmas music because everybody wants to create some sort of gift for their family and they start back in August. And you're like, oh, what am I thinking? Right? Now, that's not to say anything bad about that. It's just to say I understand that as somebody who's worked in a recording studio. I'm going to anticipate and plan for that as I go through life, that February might get really slow and I might have like to kind of bounce the other month's work into the things that I'm doing. I worked on television shows too. Television shows are very seasonal. So there will be a time where all of a sudden you get an upswing in work, right? And if you go through some of the numbers of what television shows make. 13 weeks of a television show or something like that. And so 13 episodes, and this is like reality kind of based television. And you are pulling in about, anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 per episode. You get 13 weeks that you might make $30,000 to $60,000, but you might not be pulling in a lot of money the rest of the year. So we diversify, we branch out. Not to say that you can't do something that you love and want in a senior project, but you need to anticipate what's going to happen in your life and what you're looking for into a position. So let's now actually talk about what the senior project is. Kind of a long introduction to that, right? It says, welcome to senior projects. As you embark on this academic endeavor, it marks a significant milestone in your educational journey, signaling your imminent completion of your college experience. Congratulations on reaching this pivotal point in your academic career. The senior project course serves as a distinctive platform, deviating from the conventional structure of previous academic courses. At its core, a capstone project encapsulates a culmination of knowledge and skills acquired through one's university studies, especially for your focus and discipline in the digital audio program. It represents a comprehensive demonstration of academic and practical proficiency, providing students with an opportunity to showcase their cumulative skill set. As students engage in the senior project course, they are encouraged to reflect upon and leverage the breadth and depth of their education. The course is designed to be transformative, allowing students to synthesize knowledge from various disciplines into a cohesive project. The amalgamation of academic perspectives fosters a holistic understanding that extends beyond the confines of individual courses. An integral aspect of senior projects is the creation of a portfolio piece. Now, here's the key of this, right? This project serves as a tangible representation of the skills, competencies, and achievements amassed during the academic journey. Crafted for the prospective employers, the portfolio is a testament to the student's capacity of critical thinking, problem solving, and application of theoretical concepts in practical scenarios. Senior project course distinguishes itself by adopting a bi-weekly class meeting schedule. This departure from the conventional class format underscores the autonomous and project-centric nature of the course. Students are entrusted with the responsibility of conceiving, planning, and executing a project that aligns with established expectations. I'm going to stop for just a minute, because this is where a lot of people have kind of some issue when they come into senior project. If you listen to what that last thing just said, when we come into senior projects, the professor is no longer teaching you. I am guiding at this point. Everything that you have learned through your progress and your progression into this program is now being presented to you for you to take the reins of. So we come into this course and we do something that's a little bit different than any other course, because as we come into the course, we present every week our benchmarks towards the completion of the goal, whatever that goal may be. And we present that with our own self-grade. I don't grade you, you grade yourself with your peers, stating, I have done what has been expected of me over the last 2 weeks, and I feel like I have made progress towards the completion of my goal. Do I expect every 2-week period to be exactly the same? Absolutely not. Do I expect you guys to put in the time and effort and do it? Absolutely. And then when you come into the class, I'm not teaching you, or whoever teaches the course, we're not teaching you, we're guiding you. We're looking at your benchmarks. You state what you did, what your goal was for the last week, what you actually accomplished, where you had to potentially pivot because, for example, we're recording and the vocalist lost his voice. So instead of recording vocals, we went ahead and tracked 2 more songs with the bass, drums, and guitars, right? Because if your vocal loses his voice and that's what you plan on doing for those 2 weeks and you do nothing because the vocalist lost his voice, is there other things you could have tangibly done? Absolutely. And I think too many times we think of our projects as being super linear. Like, I have to have this to do this, to do this, to do this. Where realistically, we aren't very linear at all. Because like I can pull this piece and 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 put it together and still create the product that I want. Or I can move on to something else in there. We have students who are developing video games. It's very neat to watch audio students develop video games. We have a student who just completed and showed and demonstrated to us yesterday his 5:1 surround mix of a movie, a student film that he wrote, produced, helped direct, did all the audio for, and got like all this stuff. And it was really good. Like I watched some student films in the past and I'm like, whoa. This one I was like, dude, I want to find out if as our department, we can take your thing and nominate it for a Telly Award and for like student Emmys. Like literally incredible work. And it was because it wasn't only focused on the sound, the visual, it was the full thing. Where a lot of times we get our students in the cinema and they think of audio as the last piece and they don't think about it. The whole time was considerate of the sound. It's a semi-horror kind of based thing. And he used the 5:1 stereo field so well. And I'd encourage him to take that project and remix it again into something like Atmos, right? And expand what he can do. That's a great portfolio piece because he could go to anywhere and say, this is what kind of work I do. And I didn't just take the reins on, well, I was looking for some project to do some sound on, took on the writing, the producing, casting director, hiring out, DPs and stuff like that so that he could get what he wanted in a film. And I was so proud to watch that film. It was incredible. When it's out, I'll put a link on the YouTube that we'll put up on here so that if you are watching this and you're curious, you can see what that is. All right. But you guys are self-guiding yourself through this process. Regular progress monitoring is intrinsic to senior projects course. Through formal progress reports known as benchmarks, students are expected to articulate their project advancements, methodologies, and challenges. These benchmarks will serve as structured means of gauging individual progress and ensuring alignment with course objectives. Individual accountability. Beyond the scheduled class meetings, students are tasked with dedicating over 120 hours of effort per semester to their projects. This substantial time commitment underscores the expectation for students to actively coordinate, plan, and design and implement their capstone projects independently. Monthly individual meetings with the professor during the published office hours further reinforce individual accountability and project trajectory. In conclusion, senior projects course, or the capstone course, now that we've kind of officially changed the name, is a culmination of academic adventures, or not merely a culmination of academic endeavors, but a strategic bridge between academic knowledge and real-world application. It serves as a conduit for students to traverse the realms of theory and practice, facilitating a seamless integration into their cumulative skill sets into tangible and impactful project. As you embark on this journey, embrace the opportunity to showcase your academic prowess and emerge from the senior project course equipped with a robust portfolio that exemplifies your academic and professional journey. One thing that I tell my students in capstone all the time is you are right at the cusp of not being a student anymore and you are becoming a professional. So make yourself a professional. You become the professional. And this is where you start stepping out into the world and saying, I am an audio engineer, or I am a video game sound designer, or I am a Foley, walker or mixer, or I am a re-recording mixer. I am these things. I am a dialogue editor. I am a podcast guru. Whatever it is that we go into, and there's so many things that we have the ability to go into in this program, whatever the outcome is, I want it to be something that you're proud of, right? I did a senior project as well. senior projects. Back then, we had to take on a whole group of different disciplines from digital media, and we had to create a project. Pretty much same standards. But I remember taking on a project that I thought was really cool. Got a band that I know out of Canada that was signed to a record label, and we're going to have them come to UVU, do a concert, film it, record it, and then mix it and do a DVD, because that was back then, right? In 5:1, and be like, this is going to be so awesome. And talk to them and their record label, and the record label would distribute the DVD out for free, and we'd be able to put UVU's stamp on the back of it. We're like so excited about this project, thought it was going to get all rolling, and then the dean found out about it and said, nope. There was some legal issues that I didn't consider. And some of those have been resolved in the years. We've worked very hard through faculty senate and through legislation to make sure that things that you guys do don't have nearly the ceiling that I was presented. So mine, I had to pivot right away because it got shut down bad. And we found a local band, did a music video, free song EP, and a documentary about the process of recording the music video and recording the band. And it turned out really well. We also did a concert because we didn't have any way of funding anything in a senior project. And back then, filming a documentary meant getting tapes, not just having a memory card. We had to have tapes. And so we had to have a lot of tapes, if you can imagine. And my group had 7 people. So we had a lot of cameras going. We had a lot of interactions with people. We had a lot of time invested in this thing. And the one thing I was told constantly from my professors is, you'll never get this done. This is way too big. You'll never get it done. We got it done. We burned the DVD, and it was finished. The DVD was finished 30 minutes before our final presentation, which was coming down to the wire, but we knew we were going to get it done. Just had some little artistic tiffs that happened in the very final moments of getting this thing ready, and we had to resolve those really quick. But it's something that I'm proud of. Like, I kind of make fun of it now. It's, well in the past. Our lead actor for the music video got sick the night before we were filming, and so we were sitting there waiting to start filming, and there's no actor, and we're like, so what are we going to do? And everybody looked at me and said, you're the actor now. And I hated it every moment. Okay. I was it was funny because I was a dad, was supposed to be a deadbeat drunk dad, and I turned my life around, but I have a kid, and the kid was my cousin. And it's funny because my little cousin is now an audio engineer, and he was like probably 7 when we did it, right? Or 6 or something. And the story was that the kid's mom had died, and I'm raising a kid alone, but now I'm like an alcoholic on a couch, and I was just like, oh, I didn't want to do that, but it was all good. We had some flashback scenes. One, like, if you ever find the DVD, it's up in 623 and put it in. Like, they're like, we want you to go walk on this snow with this girl, and we're out walking, and she's walking on the snow, and I'm, post holing is in snow. Like, I'm like sinking up to my knee. Like, she's just like skirting across, and so that we put that in like the documentary and some of the outtakes. It was fun. Everybody that was in my senior project group, I still talk to, except for one who passed away. But I still talk to these people. I'm super close to them, and you will build relationships with people that can last a very long time in doing so. So I want to let's go up here real quick. Maybe this computer is being very slow. Look at that. It's like it disconnected from the internet. Maybe we'll look at this. Do, 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 do. Yes. Yeah.
So there's capstone 1 and capstone 2,
Mhm.
correct?
Yeah,
So it's split up between like 2 semesters essentially.
correct.
And what is, I guess, the difference between the two? Is the first capstone planning, getting started, and then this capstone just finishing?
So the only difference in capstone 1 and 2, and it actually doesn't have those titles anymore with the new format of the DAPR, it will only be the one thing that you take twice. So the difference in this is like when I bring up this is right here. The first semester, you have a project proposal, and the second semester, you have a catch-up. So the project proposal, you present what your project is, you present timelines, how you're hoping that all these things are going to turn out, what you'd like to have accomplished, what timeline you're hoping to make these certain things are by saying like, okay, I'm going to record a band. So the first month I'm going to do all the planning, try to find a band. I'm going to go to like a bunch of different venues around here, go meet with a bunch of bands, find a prospective band that I really like and would like to work on producing an album with them. Month 2, we're actually going to get in the studio and start tracking, getting some basic ideas down. Da, 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 da. And so we build this out. Well, by the goal is like, say we're in fall semester, the goal would be to like have a lot of it tracked by December. Okay. Then you come in to the next semester in spring, and that's where your benchmark catch up is. You're like, halfway through this project, this is where I expected to be. The reality is this is where I'm actually at. I recorded most of the stuff, but the first band that I was working with quit because they broke up. And so I had to go find another band. We were able to find another band, and I've been able to get these pieces back together. And da, da, da. What I mean by saying this is this happens. Bands will split up, and we've watched students collapse because they think that their senior project's ruined and that they're done for. The reality of it is that if you work in any project anywhere in any time frame, there's a chance that that project is just simply going to stop at some time. And what we do is we don't panic about it. We simply reframe, reprocess, and go forward. I've watched students who had a great idea, gone driven as hard as they could for the first term or first semester of work, and then all of a sudden they come to a place where they realize that this project cannot be completed. I had a student that was working on a project and realized like there's absolutely no way I can get the things that I wanted to done. I way overshot what I was hoping to accomplish. And at that point, we're okay, you're a failure, right? And you're done. We say, okay, what can we do to salvage? And if we can't salvage it, what can we do to move you into something else? Is there a great learning experience in that? Absolutely. And failure, we learn so much, right? And it's like you didn't fail class, the project failed. There's a difference, right? You worked so hard. I watched your efforts through this whole entire thing. You did everything that you possibly could, and then it came to a quick halt. A lot of students had that problem when COVID hit, right? And all of a sudden we were doing all these things different. So some of my students in that time frame, they had anticipated releasing albums and stuff like that. We had a group doing podcasts, and all of a sudden we can't do podcasts because we can't get together anymore. And so they completed the things that they could, and we worked through the rest of the semester doing something else. One student had like 14 different songs, had a bunch of different vocalists that were going to come in and sing on those songs, and all of a sudden social distancing, can't use the studio because we can't get as many like the people in. It became very frustrating. All of a sudden it was like, we're not coming to campus for a while. And so what was the pivot there? I said, do what you can. If we release instrumentals, we release instrumentals. You still had to create, produce, and record all of these things, mix and master it out. It's not the end of the world, right? Like we thought so at the time because we thought the zombies were all going to start walking around soon. But still completed the senior projects, right? We've had people that have gone through and they've done everything that they possibly could. We had a student work on this film, do all the sound, record all the stuff, and then it comes down to like the final month, and the director doesn't have a cut for them. His goal was to like not only do this the recording of the sound on set, but to do the sound design and all that stuff. And it's a month away from graduation, and he's got nothing to mix, and he pestering and pestering and pestering the director, and the director won't give him a cut. And so came to me, almost tears, like I'm not going to graduate. And I said, nah, you got any other projects that you could mix like you were going to finish this project? And he was like, actually, I do. I did a project, but I would love to be able to try and do, instead of a stereo mix, I'd love to do a surround mix on this. And we sat down and calculated about how much time it would take for him to complete this. And like, you got about a month. Can you put this much time into this? Submitted his project, graduated, and then later came to me and said, hey, I finally finished that film that never finished. Sent me a link to watch it, and it was great. Did we punish him for the people that he was working with not following through on their commitment to time? No. We let him do something else. I am very much about let's pivot. Today is an example of let's pivot in and of itself. 7 minutes before our guest can't come because of something that's happened. Okay, what am I going to do? Well, I could sit here and mope with you guys, right? We could all just have a little kumbaya cry session, or we can just learn something that I think needs to be explained to not only you guys, but whoever's watching online. And I want people to come into this program again with the idea of like, I want to do this. This is what's expected. So let's take a look really quick at a project proposal. I'll edit this into the online thing so they can see this, but this is very much like I spent a lot of time writing these things out, trying to make this as clear as possible. And then people are like, I still don't know what I'm supposed to do. Basically, essentially, and all the fun little things that go into this are, I want you to create for me something like a PowerPoint presentation that has these different components in it. Okay. Number one, client identification and rationale. We don't want you to be your own client. We want you to work with people. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't do something that you become your own client, but you need to get approval on that. And what I'm going to explain, like we have two groups right now in Capstones who are making independent video games, and they want to make independent video games. And I'm like, okay, how much programming experience do you have? And they have none. How much animation and stuff do you have for you to create the character? None. So you're going to go through, learn a game engine, go through, learn how to program the game engine, create and develop the stories, and do all the sound and implement the sound and all that. Because this is so tricky and difficult, I don't need you to have a specific client of outside of like maybe Owen, who can guide you a little bit where you get stuck. And then, for example, like Tanner, will put him kind of like, because he's done a lot of the implementations and stuff, like Tanner's on call if you guys need help, right? So let's make Tanner almost the client, even though he's a student. Now it might seem a little bit weird, but it also works very well because they get direct contact with somebody who's a little bit further ahead of them. I want you to find somebody in the real world who is somebody that you look up to and is doing something similar to what you want to do, and see if they will help supervise your project. That doesn't mean they have to be there all the time. It means you take notes and you send it to them and say, am I on track? How can I improve what I'm doing? Where do I need to restructure? And how can I go forward? Client identification and rationale. So a lot of times if we have students that want to build hardware here, tell them, well, go talk to Wiz. Wiz is great at that kind of stuff. Or we had a student who was building something, and I said, why don't you go talk to Travis over at Mog Audio? And I introduced him to Travis at Mog Audio. They had a really big, long connection, and they developed and did the things they needed to do. That was one that couldn't be finished within the time frame that we wanted because his client kept changing the scope of things. But we want somebody who can keep you on task and on track. That student also took a pivot and actually designed and built a recording studio for someone instead of making a hardware unit. That's kind of a big change, right? But to design and to develop and then build a recording studio took a lot of time and effort too. Design, developed diffusers, did calculations, learned math, learned MATLAB to design these things, and actually went out and built these things so that they could create the studio and the acoustic environment that they wanted. That's what I mean. Like, I want you guys to challenge yourself, right? You go say, I'm a studio designer now. Well, give me proof. And you can go say, well, here's some pictures of what this was, and this is what it became. That's proof of concept, right? You're gonna get jobs. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to design the studio. I want to just sit in there and do it. Okay, project out, objectives and significance. What is the desired outcome of my project? Well, if I'm gonna go back to what you guys know I work on all the time is like music stuff. So I want to create an album with specific band that has 12 songs. 12 songs are all going to be between 3 and 5 minutes. Some of the band has some songs already, but in the process of this, they have 7 songs. So in order to complete this, we need to add 5 more songs. As we add 5 more songs, I'm going to develop soundscapes with them. We want this to be a concept album, so we're going to make it so that the songs tie into each other, have different soundscapes that pull you through an adventure as we go through this album. Okay. My job will be to track, to produce, mix, master, and release this album with the band. Our desired platform is we're going to go through DistroKid, and we're going to basically essentially set up a record label that I'm going to distribute this out on. And I'm also going to learn what it means to be a rights manager through ISRC, BMI, and through DistroKid. Oh wow, you just took on a pretty big significant thing. Not only are you doing the part that like you are passionate about, which is the recording part, but you're also learning what it means to manage and run a record label. That's the kind of thing that I want to see you guys do, where it's not just like, well, I'm gonna take this band's pre-recorded tracks and I'm gonna mix them. Okay, what's the challenge? Well, I need to take this band's ideas, meld them with my ideas, and have a collaborative agreement with them on how we're going to produce this, the soundscapes that we're doing, how we're going to make this actually flow, and how these need to sound by comparing them to boom, 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 that are artists that they would like to sort of sound like, or this album that they would like to conceptualize with, right? That's much harder than saying I'm going to take some bedroom producer recorded a couple of songs and I'm going to mix their vocals and guitars together and that's it. You know, like, okay, but all of you can do that, right? Why is that a challenge? Now, if you said I'm going to record and track 50 different singer-songwriters and create the best of Utah County or something like that, okay, that's a completely different thing and that's going to take a lot of time. That's a lot more work than just somebody handing you a couple tracks and saying, okay, mix it. Well, then what? Like, how's that show that you've done anything significant beyond what we do in class already, right? Methodological framework. Gosh, I'm having a hard time saying that today. Let's see. We want to talk about the procedural steps and your methodologies of why you're going to do this, how you're going to do it. Deliverable specs. That's an important one. We're going to release this album through DistroKid, which will go out to Tidal and to Spotify and to Apple Music. It will be released on April 1st, 2025 through these outlets. If it's going to be released April 2025, I now have an end date and I can work backwards from there because I need at least a month of lead time for the distribution to be 100% caught up, which means I have to have the album mastered by March 1st, which means that I want to be completely mixed by maybe about, let's say, February 1st, which means I need to have everything tracked and edited by 15th of December, which means that I need to have this piece done before, then this piece done before, then this, and then all of a sudden you can work backwards from that, right? So if you have that end date and the end goal in mind, you can work backwards and work a time frame out. Now, let's say it's in the semester and things are going a little bit haywire and you don't meet April 1st as your goal, but we're on April 7th and you had a goal of April 1st, and now all of a sudden April 7th rolls around and you finally finish all the process of all this. Do you get punished because you didn't hit your initial date? No, that's not how this works. Like, let's say you can't get it officially released on Spotify until 2 days after the semester ended because there was some snags in there. I'm not going to punish you for that part, right? You are still doing it, but that was your initial expectation. That's why we do these, is so that you have some sort of way to compare what you're going to do throughout the semester. Then you have your evaluation metrics. My client expects this to sound professional and expects it to have similar aspects to these albums that they really love. Okay. Their stakeholder and audience analysis. That means who's the stakeholder? Stakeholders are band members, people who are invested into the project, you, and then the audience is obviously like, well, this band's fan base, potential students, or if you're building a video game and it changes, right? If you're doing a film, obviously, who are we trying to get this to? I'm making children's music, so I'm not marketing this and I'm not trying to make it sound like Mick Gordon. I need it to sound like Baby Shark. So am I in that? Do I recognize that? Development constraints, like what things could be potential problems? Well, I got to book out a studio that can get booked out pretty heavily. So I probably want to make sure that I'm booking out the studio in advance and making sure that all the band members could be there so that we can get this thing done within there. Cost estimation. This is where I want you guys to think like a professional. Have students turn in things that, yeah, this is going to cost $500. I don't think any project costs $500. Okay. It might be, I want you to look at 2 semesters worth of time, 120 hours, plus any other additional time that you add into this development cost, and really look at it like this thing's going to cost $50,000. Figure out why it costs $50,000 and show me. It doesn't have to be $50,000, but it should be a significant price tag if you're working on something for 8 months, right? Yeah.
So part of that would be, say, like, I'm, planning on designing sound for a game or something, like part of that $50,000 would be like, if I was being paid for it, I would give myself a salary of, $20-$25 an hour times 240 hours would just be part of that budget, or it's just like the amount I would be paid if I was actually being paid.
So let's say you're doing a video game and it's horror games that you've been assigned to do, and you don't ever play video games that are horror. You do fantasy-based video games, and what's the everybody does the Candy Crush. And they have like the bright, happy, positive sounds, and you're really good at that, but all of a sudden you need to create horror soundscapes and you have no idea. Guess what some of your time is going to be in this? It's called research and development. And that might mean you are spending time going out and playing some horror video games. And students look at me funny when I tell them that. They're like, wait, my homework is playing video games? Well, if you need to create a horror video game and you have no idea what they sound like, you better get on board pretty fast, because if you take to them your Candy Crush saga and have this happy, like cheerful music in the background and the sparkly sound effects that are coming out of that as what you're turning into them, you're going to fail. So yes, and you would want to be able to say, these are the games and the target games for that type of audience. Again, analysis of stakeholder and audience, and say, I need to spend at least this amount of time going through these types of games to hear how these types of sounds integrate into this so that I'm aware of that. I do that when I do any type of television show. But we're doing a reality television show. This is a bunch of years ago, but Duck Dynasty was the #1 reality TV show at the time. I had never seen Duck Dynasty, but guess what I did for 2 weeks? I watched Duck Dynasty every day after work before I'd go into the studio to understand how Duck Dynasty was mixed. Because I needed to know that. It was an important part of creating, because when they said to me, we want this to have the sound and feeling a little bit of Duck Dynasty, well, I better go watch that, right? Because if I haven't seen it, they don't care. I need to go watch it. And then if you get into this independent contractor world, you get to write that purchase of those things or going to the movies, you get to write it off because it's research. Crazy. When I buy music sometimes, I can put it down as research and write off the cost of me purchasing music or my favorite streaming subscription. I can write that off as a tax write-off. Absolutely. Yep. You can do that. And if you travel out to a concert that isn't here in Utah, it is a business expense. And now you can write off your plane tickets, your hotel. I'm not making this stuff up. There's some great benefits to becoming an independent contractor. Anyways, then the final part of this is the approval. You bring it to me, you bring it to your client, we approve of it, and then we send you on your way and you start working towards a senior project. And that, I hope, gives you guys a pretty decently good idea without giving you the details of like what I actually want you to do, because that is what I want you guys to figure out. I want you guys to know that, like, hey, you can come up to me at any time during your academic time on campus and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing something like this for a senior project. Do you think this has enough depth and breadth to make it so that this could work? And I might come back at you and say, yeah, but let's add this element to it. Let's try and do this so that we push you a little bit farther. Because I've had students that they just don't quite have enough there and we want to push them. So that's the end of this. You guys have questions, Eric?
Yeah, I got one more. So just kind of going back to say again, like the video game thing, I want to develop for a video game, right? So I'm doing like starting my capstone next fall. But say I'm looking around, shopping around for a team to design sound for a game that they're putting together. Say I find something in this spring, and it's something that I think would be what I want to do for my capstone. I'm assuming there's no issue with I find this team, then I come to you and be like, I haven't started the capstone officially, as far as the school's transcripts going, but I want to start putting this together because I want it to be my capstone.
You can preload some time
Yeah.
into it, right? The thing that we want to make sure is that you understand the tracking metrics of what we expect.
Yeah.
So that you're not like, well, because I started this in the spring and now we're in the last semester of spring and it's like, well, I finished a month early.
Yeah.
So that means I don't have to come to school and stuff, right? That's not how it works.
Yeah. I figured that was probably the answer, but I just wanted to manifest to make sure I found the perfect thing and I wanted to get started on it.
And come talk to me.
Yeah.
Or if I'm not the instructor and it's like Arlen, then talk to him. If it's Owen, talk to him. Right. That's all you got to do is just say, who's the instructor next time this course is taught? Currently it's me for the next foreseeable while. And but it does get passed off. It does rotate. So if it's me, we'll talk and say, yeah, let's see what we can work out with you. Yeah.
This is something I never heard or was expressed, but you can collaborate with other audio students on the same project.
Oh, absolutely.
You guys can turn it into the same project.
Absolutely. Yeah. It just has to be a little bit more challenging than we have groups with 3 and 4 people and building video games. They're doing all of the work. They are designing, they're implementing, they're programming, they're learning all the steps of this. They're writing the scripts, they're making the cutscenes, they're everything that you could possibly imagine in the video game, the titles and all this stuff. They are doing all of that. That's why it's this is a lot of work. It's not something one person's going to ever be doing. I hope not. but because they are willing to put this time and effort in, I will absolutely approve something like that because number one, look at it this way. We developed our own team. Maybe all of a sudden they have a company at the end of this thing where they go out and create another game and they get some seed money and are able to keep going and produce a video game development company, right? Number two, think about this too. I want you guys to make this program look amazing. And we want to be able to use your projects to say, we want to show you guys off for real, right? When you have a project, I want to be able to go on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn and be like, this is what our students are doing. This is how cool we are. Like, it's not me, it's you guys. And then we want to be able to bring students back into the fold because of the cool stuff that you were able to do, setting the standard for the future. Cool. Any other questions? All right. Well, people online, thank you for joining us, guys in here. You'll see a little, just put a little write up, and it's not a big deal. It's me. So, we'll see you guys all next time, and I'll see some of you downstairs in a few minutes.